The topic of my documentary is drag culture in Bristol, exploring certain drag personalities' experiences with drag culture and queer culture, and also touching on topics like gender identity. Drag seems to have only come to the forefront of pop culture in recent years, but there have been so many influential drag queens that have been around for a long time. Divine, the drag queen that inspired the look for Disney villain Ursula, Crystal LeBeja, the pageant queen that started the house culture for drag queens, Lady Bunny, a legendary drag performer and DJ who also founded the LGBT festival Wigstock, and of course RuPaul, the drag queen who is a model, actor, and singer, and who created the competition show RuPaul's Drag Race, which has hugely popularised drag culture in today's society. Today, drag queens have music careers, modelling careers, work as stand up comedians, actors, and dancers. As RuPaul explains, drag has always been thought of as the stepchild of show business or even the gay rights movement, and now these girls are at the forefront of gay culture and of pop culture. The Queen and Paris is Burning are two monumental documentaries on drag culture, both of which are my main inspiration for this documentary. The Queen was a documentary by Frank Simon and Flawless Sabrina, which filmed behind the scenes of the 1967 Miss All America Camp Beauty contest. The documentary films the queens competing and also discussing sexual identity, drag culture, and sex changes. Paris is Burning is an incredible documentary by Jenny Livingston that explores the ball culture of New York in the 1980s. It focuses on queer icons of the time like Pepper LaBeija, Dorian Corey, Willie Ninja, and others. The documentary explores in depth the issues of race, poverty, homophobia, AIDS, and explains terminology and traditions of the gay and drag subculture. In a similar way, I will be aiming to explore the queer culture and drag culture of Bristol. I will draw on Butler's theory of gender performativity, discussing the idea that gender is a cultural code which relies on imitation and reappearance, and how drag culture can reveal the instability of the relationship between sex and gender, and the test of the performative nature of gender. Drawing on the Queen and Paris is Burning and incorporating elements from workroom discussions on RuPaul's Drag Race, I would like to informally interview a few drag personalities in Bristol. I would interview them while they're getting into drag for a show. Although the interviews will be informal and won't have a rigid structure, some topics I would like to make sure are touched on will be how they got into drag, how they find the drag scene in Bristol, their experience of queer culture in Bristol, their opinions on how drag can relate to gender identity and on gender as a performance, beauty standards, wealth and race, and the roles they play in drag culture. Some Bristol drag queens I have been talking to about being part of this documentary are Sally Savage, Dee Ryder, and Carmen Monoxide. I've also been talking to some drag kings about being part of this documentary, Isaac Dix and Manly Mannington. I would like to include them as I don't want to limit the discussion to just drag queens, and I think it would be interesting to discuss drag culture from the experience of drag kings who typically don't have as much exposure in mainstream culture. As in the style of Paris is Burning, I'm planning on incorporating clips of these intimate discussions with the performers, with clips of them performing, dancing, and walking, alternating between colourful performances and candid interviews about complex subjects. If I hadn't already made it painstakingly obvious, the aesthetics in my documentary will draw heavily on Paris is Burning. The documentary will focus solely on the drag personalities that are being interviewed as they will be narrating and performing. The main aspect of The Queen and Paris is Burning that I would like to stay true to is the camera remaining understated, without complex shots and angles or obviously stage shots, just to allow the subjects to speak and perform for themselves. I will try to section the documentary with subheadings for different topics that are being discussed, to ensure that it flows naturally and that all sections are relevant. As a product of their time, The Queen and Paris is Burning have these grainy filters which I think detracts from the fabulousness of their subjects, so I won't be having any overlays or filters in my documentary, and I will try to make it as sharp and clear as possible. I will also be increasing the saturation of the colours in the film, as I personally think a film about drag with low saturated, washed out colours just seems to be an oxymoron. I will be filming with a handheld DSLR camera with a shotgun mic. The interviews will be filmed predominantly with medium shots, however I will incorporate some close-up shots of them putting makeup on and some extreme close-up shots of hands and eyes to highlight emotions where needed in a scene, and some over-the-shoulder shots looking in the mirror. The interviews will also have a shallow depth of field so that some of the background is blurred. I'm hoping this will make colours in the background stand out whilst not detracting from the main focus, the drag personalities being interviewed. I will try to stick to the rule of thirds to make these scenes more aesthetically pleasing. I will be unlikely to be using natural light as I'll be filming predominantly in the evening, so I'll ensure that the dressing rooms I film in have adequate lighting to be able to film a clear picture, and the venues will have clear enough lighting for me to be able to capture the performances. I will also be including background music as part of the documentary to add emotion to the film. This will be instrumental music, and whether it's upbeat or low tempo will depend on what's being discussed. I'll be ensuring that everyone I interview signs an informed consent form to be part of the documentary. As part of this, they will be able to review the finished documentary and input on anything that they would like to be edited or removed. The documentary will have an overarching, inspiring feel, and I hope it educates the viewers on the real-life experiences of these incredible drag artists and gives more exposure to the amazing drag scene in Bristol. Thank you.